it seems like the West, and I will include America in this, is not taking this level of threat seriously, which is why we have incident after incident.
Sean, this is exactly why I wrote Defeating Jihad. I want to send a very clear message to all Americans. You are on the front line of this war. It's not just the people who wear the cloth of the Republic or who carry a badge or a gun. It's the soccer moms at the soccer game. It's the people picking up their groceries at the grocery store. It's those American kids in a concert, an American concert in downtown Paris, or at a Christmas party in San Bernardino. There is no front line on this war. The front line is when you leave your house in the morning. That's the front line. And this is the reality. The enemy has a plan. The enemy is dedicated. And I know one thing, Sean, and you know this as well as I do. If the political correctness continues, we will see attacks like this in America. They will continue to bring the jihad to our shores. We have now it's gone up since we last spoke. We have now killed or arrested 107 ISIS individuals on U.S. soil since the caliphate was declared. Not 7.
Yeah,
107.
Many of the topics we've been discussing this presidential election season, immigration, Donald Trump talking about at least a temporary ban on people coming from countries that practice Sharia law. We've watched the Islamization of Europe, and I've discussed it at length on this program and on my radio program. You know, for example, most people don't know that Great Britain has 88 Sharia courts, or that no-go zones actually do exist in France. I know because I've covered it here on this program. But if somebody grows up in a country that believes that men can tell women how to dress, whether they can go to school, whether they can go to work, if they tell women that they can't drive, if a woman needs 4 male eyewitnesses for rape, and you want to come to America, how do we know that you don't want to advance your theocracy, your caliphate, or whether or not you want to assimilate? How can you possibly ascertain what is in the heart of that individual? It goes to the heart, the very heart of this election campaign.
Exactly, Sean. Without a doubt, this election, November, will not be about pocketbooks. It won't be about Obamacare or tax rates. It's going to be about innocent people being mowed down as they have been in America and in Europe. It's going to be a national security election. And what are the American people going to want more and more? Just look at Donald Trump's figures in the last 10 days. His figures are increasing because he says, I'm going to be a law and order candidate and I'm going to fight a war. He is explicit. This is a war. This isn't violent extremism, as the Obama administration would have you believe. It's not about jobs for jihadis. It's about crushing a global conspiracy that wants to enslave or murder us, Sean. And people are ready. After 7 years, they're ready for leadership.
I love the fact that you point this out. This is a winnable war. We are talking about the free world and the United States of America and the greatest military on the face of this earth. But it really does highlight, when the president would use the euphemisms, man-caused disasters, overseas contingency operations, workplace violence. Even today, he said, yes, he did say terror. I guess that's a step in the right direction, but he won't recognize Islamic terrorism, which is what this likely is. And then we get to the issue of $150 billion to Iran. And then we get to the issue of pulling out of Iraq early and creating a vacuum in Iraq and Syria for ISIS. And then we get into the issue of the president giving Mohammed Morsi, a former Muslim Brotherhood terrorist, F-16s and $1.5 billion in tanks. And it really does highlight, in retrospect, how dangerous these decisions were, does it not?
Oh, completely. I mean, thank you for honing in on the subtitle of my book. Everybody gives me grief that I say the winnable war. But it is winnable if we have American leadership. But to win a war, you need 2 requirements, Sean. Number 1, you have to admit you're at war, which this administration doesn't. And secondly, you have to want to win. And again, if you look at the decisions in Iraq, the decisions in Libya, in Syria, with Iran, it is not about winning. The president has said that global warming is the primary threat to America. Well, I'd like somebody at a press conference tomorrow to ask him if he still thinks it's global warming that endangers the American citizen.
Wow, you bring that up, you bring up jobs for jihadis. I mean, frankly, I don't have strong enough words to say just how asinine a lot of these policies are and these euphemisms are and these cliched statements of him. The French mayor has spoken out. Now, we've watched the unfolding of the refugee crisis all across Europe. We're debating how many people to take into this country. Donald Trump has pointed out that Hillary wants a 550% increase in the number of refugees that we're taking in. Each refugee, by the way, would cost the American taxpayer $20,000. But now the French mayor says no more Muslims. He orders the destruction of certain places where there's over 7,000 Muslims in that particular area. We saw what happened in Germany. We saw what happened in Belgium. Do you think Europe now revisits the idea of their immigration policies?
Well, look, if common sense had any role to play, you think it would. I think the Brexit is an indication of the average person saying enough is enough. I mean, just a couple of data points, Sean. Somebody who tracks these things in the government sent me a map of Nice this evening. Within walking distance of the promenade where the attack occurred is a zone urbaine sensitive, what others have called an enclave. Within walking distance of the attack is an area that does not have full sovereign control by the federal authorities. Secondly, this should make everybody wake up. I've been told by a very reliable source that of 2,000 refugees we've let into the country recently from the war zones in the Middle East, once they are given refugee status and handed over to the charities that house them and give them addresses, the federal authorities are not allowed to know the address of where they're living because that impinges upon their privacy rights. Think about that, Sean.
Yeah. No,
it's
profound.
It's insanity. It's insanity.
It is. I want to lean on your position as the distinguished chair of military theory at Marine Corps University, Dr. Gorka, and I want to ask you this. I look at Vietnam, I look at 58,000 Americans died in that conflict, in that war. I look at Iraq and I look at Afghanistan and I see that 5,000 American, men and women, American treasure, blood, sweat, financial cost and tears. And I see in each conflict and war, maybe they start out with all the best intentions. These wars then get politicized in D.C. We end up pulling out early. And the very gains that these Americans sacrifice for are then handed over to the enemy. I don't think we can fight wars this way anymore. We can't have kids go to Iraq or go to Afghanistan and they don't even have up-armored Humvees and knocking door to door, trying to find a single terrorist in one place. You talk about winning this war. How do we win this war without without politics getting in the way and stopping victory?
We can't. If we allow politics into the threat assessment or national security, we will continue to lose. The political elite, look, I completely dismiss this conventional wisdom of what is called the CNN effect. That if sooner or later we see too much bloodshed, too many of our Marines or soldiers injured, and then the American public says, enough, bring them home. It's not true, Sean. The American public will support any war that is just if the leadership in Washington explains to them the stakes involved. Look at World War II. We mobilized 12 million Americans to destroy the Nazis. We need the leadership in D.C. to say, look, if we don't win this war, your children may be targeted. That's what it takes.
Dr. Gorka, I always appreciate having you on. I wish, again, we see evil in our time. America defeated fascism and Nazism and Imperial Japan, and America can
test every person from here who is of a Muslim background, and if they believe in Sharia, they should be deported. Sharia is incompatible with Western civilization. Modern Muslims who have given up Sharia, glad to have them as citizens, perfectly happy to have them next door. But we need to be fairly relentless about defining who our enemies are. Anybody who goes on a website favoring ISIS or Al-Qaeda or other terrorist groups, that should be a felony and they should go to jail. Any organization which hosts such a website should be engaged in a felony. It should be closed down immediately. Our forces should be used to systematically destroy every internet-based source And frankly, if we can't destroy them through the internet, we should destroy them with kinetic power, using various weapons, starting with predators, and just frankly, just killing them. I am sick and tired of being told that the wealthiest, most powerful civilization in history, all of Western civilization, is helpless in the face of a group of medieval barbarians who, for example, recently burned 20 young women to death, burned them to death, because they wouldn't have sex with them. A group which beheaded recently in the Philippines 2 Canadian businessmen. And we're told to be reasonable, to be passive, to not judge. Well, I just want to tell you tonight, everybody who watches this video, this is the fault of Western elites who lack the guts to do what is right, to do what is necessary, and to tell us the truth. And that starts with Barack Obama.
That's a powerful statement. I agree wholeheartedly. Let me go back to the beginning of your statement. You said Western civilization is at war, and you said Sharia is incompatible with Western civilization. Here's my question, because it goes to the heart of the refugee debate. Statements made by Donald Trump that until we're able to vet people coming from countries that practice Sharia, they shouldn't be allowed into the country. So it's a big part of our national security debate heading into the election. So my question is, if you have a clash of cultures and people believe they can tell women how to dress, whether they can work or drive or go to school, and they treat women like second-class citizens, and you can't build a temple and you can't build a Christian church, and so they're against women, and gays get murdered for being gay, so there's attacks against women, gays, Jews, and Christians. How do you possibly ascertain whether or not that person really wants assimilation, really wants a new life, or whether or not they want to expand that caliphate, which is what we're at war against?
Look, the first step is you have to ask them the questions. The second step is you have to monitor what they're doing on the internet. The third step is, let me be very clear, you have to monitor the mosques. I mean, if you're not prepared to monitor the mosque, this whole thing is a joke. Where do you think the primary source of recruitment is? Where do you think the primary source of indoctrination is? You've got to look at the madrasas. If you're a school which is teaching Sharia, you want to expel it from the country. We have to understand, we are behaving as though we are insane. We're like sheep, wondering why the wolves keep killing us. These people are opposed to our way of life. They are opposed to our value system. They are opposed to our various religions. They're opposed to the whole concept of freedom, and they're very honest about it. They tell us what they want to do. And again, I just want to cite, because it's so remarkable. I mean, Daniel Silva's new book, Black Widow, which is a novel, the opening couple chapters are so scary in being exactly what you just saw tonight in Nice that I can't recommend it too highly.
You know, there's a propaganda magazine by Al Qaeda, and in 2010, our intelligence officials drew from it. It called on followers to use trucks as killing machines and mow down civilians. And Al Qaeda and ISIS share the exact same techniques. You know, a very prominent national security figure once pulled me aside recently and said to me, Europe is gone. And he was explaining 88 Sharia courts in Great Britain. He said no-go zones are real, separate and apart, not a part of assimilating with European society, and that Europe is going to be subject to attack after attack after attack, and America is probably 10, 15 to 20 years behind in making the exact same mistakes. Is he right in that assertion?
Well, the director of French intelligence said yesterday, ironically, that Europe's on the edge of a civil war. And I think that's probably true. You look at the number of rapes and assaults in Germany last year, which only now is coming out, over 1,200 women raped and assaulted in Germany by people who are here from places like Syria. And you begin to realize that the whole elite media, the whole elite political class has been desperately trying to keep the lid on the truth of where we are and what our situation is. Again, let's take a couple of simple examples. The Sharia courts in Britain should be outlawed. Why should you tolerate a religiously imposed court, and as opposed to the civil society all of us agreed to be part of? That's a total repudiation of everything that goes back to the Magna Carta and the whole concept of English common law. Similarly, here in the United States, why should we tolerate a single person coming here who doesn't want to become an American? And when they say, well, the guy in Orlando, for example, who killed people at the gay nightclub, he's an American citizen. Fine. His father was committed to a radical version in Afghanistan. He said he was delighted at 9/11. I mean, the minute somebody says, I'm delighted at 9/11 that Americans were killed, I think we should put them under deep surveillance. And the second, that's strike one. And I'd be like in a 2-strike, not a 3-strike model.
Toro.
And I think you either kick them out of the country, and people tell me you can't do that to American citizens. We are in a war. We had better rethink the rules, or we are going to lose the war.
Mr.